Does the regional manager speak to, because that regional manager in Wellington looked front up to Merrill for.
The last. They were going to allow, looking at drawings and silver in the church tradition. Sure. So, and particular person.
Yeah. I'm going to start this person on there was a topic that I start spending. Anyway, to the business at hand. Yes. Welcome to those who are joining online too. So 2 words on the board: continuing districtisation. In some regards, to me, that continuing is the most important one, because when we talk about doing something differently, there's a human reaction to go, oh gosh, that's different, I'm not sure I like it. But the reality is here that we're either continuing or completing districtisation. That's already 82% done, as you'll find in one of our slides. Of all the income that comes into council from rates, 82% of it is spent at the council level and 18% at the board level. Why we're looking at having, or why we're having a conversation about potentially changing it, is primarily over the situation that we have with now operating debt. We have to be very mindful of council's overall debt numbers, because there is a risk or potentially a likelihood, depending on how optimistic or pessimistic you are, that with the current Three Waters standards and regulations that are in front of us, we will reach our debt ceiling. We don't ever want to reach it, we will reach it in a short number of years. So we have to maintain a very close look at how we do over the whole district manage our money. The second part of it is that the opening of the Cromwell Town Hall in a couple of years is going to change things greatly in Cromwell, to the extent of around about a $280 a year increase in Cromwell rates. And there's a question of fairness there, and as you'll see with a couple of slides that come up, you might say, and people have said to me, why the hell should somebody in Tevere or the Manitoba think about even supporting in any way, shape or form the Cromwell Memorial Hall? I think there's a couple of things there. One is, in essence, that's going to be the Central Otago Event Centre in all but names, because I do not see Central Otago building another one within this district. But secondly, why I emphasise that word continuing, when we look at the benefits of districtisation in our Rogan space and in our Three Waters space, which you will see, the benefits have accrued to other places as well. So if we look at one thing in one time, you get a distorted picture of what the overall picture is. To put it another way, Cromwell is massively subsidising Three Waters and Rogan and other places. So there's a bit of a balancing act if you want to talk about fairness. And the third thing is simply a matter of efficiency. We have a finance team at the moment that when we do the annual plan, the long-term plan, the annual report, etc., is running 5 sets of books and it could be running 1. And at a business level, is that efficient way to do it. There is 2 parts to this discussion though. If we do go ahead with districtisation, the second part of it is continuing districtisation. The second part of it is what happens to our boards. Because if we're saying to the boards, you're no longer controlling that 18% or part of that 18%, what is left for the boards? And that's a discussion to have with the boards. We're already making a start to it. We had Anna Harrison do the first of the board reports at our last council meeting, and that's excellent. Normally we're doing that TVCB in 2 months' time because it's alphabetical. And also, if there is something that comes up at a board table that you want to get in front of council urgently, then people can skip and we'll have 2 reports that month. Importantly too, is we've fallen into a bad habit, or it's always been designed, but it's been that way since before I was mayor, of the boards having their lane and council having their lane, and we've missed, I think, a real trick with getting the boards, and as you just expressed, Jill, roading situations, and Russell with your roading here, how do you get that message up to council? It's great that you talk about it here, but how do you get it up to the council table? And that's where those discussions that Norm would bring to the table would focus on, the things that are concerning the board and elevate it to that level. But we've also had decisions that are made at council that are board focused, that don't necessarily have a board input. So the move from here forward will be that if there is a ward specific paper coming up to council, so and I'll use the example that happened 2 terms ago. There was a Cromwell airport paper that came to council and we never got the board's opinion on it. The board was very upset about that, and in hindsight, we all went, yeah, I can see why. So we're going to endeavour to have board's views on anything. Those are just a couple of starters. We want to hear from the boards how we actually work better from a council to board relationship, not just the relationship, but the transmission of what it is that's happening in your communities that you know best coming up to the council table. So that's why we're here. We're having a conversation, we're having a discussion. There's no predetermination or decisions being made, but it's a discussion that we I hope from my intro you'll understand why we feel we need to have it now. Peter, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, and absolutely all of that. And well, just very quickly, you recall that at the beginning we had the delegation discussion across the community and the various community boards had thoughts on that. And what was quite clear that came out of that was that the community boards, a number of them were quite vocal and saying, look, we should actually lead this discussion, the districtisation discussion first of all, and talk about that as opposed to talking about the delegation. So in essence, the delegation discussion was paused. It will come back. But this is the districtisation discussion that community board wanted, and this is talking about those bits of council ward business that still belongs to the wards around parks and recreation, culture sort of stuff with predominantly this. It's a small portion of council's business, but it's quite a lot of work to manage that small portion of council business. Just as the next set of its force, it's involved to buy the council. This discussion around districtisation is not about altering levels of service. This is just about funding sort of the status quo, whatever it's funded now, taking it forward through districtisation would continue to be funded, but through council. The flying on the back of the districtisation discussion, obviously, is we've deferred the LTP by 12 months. That discussion will commence in October this year. The decision that comes out of the districtisation discussion will flow straight into that piece of work. Because in many ways, that will set part of the financial sort of baseline that we're operating with it. And any question around levels of service changes or whatever across the community, across all sorts of council business, that will be a discussion for the LGP. So this is not what digitisation is about. Digitisation is changing the source of funding for the stable base, or do we move it to the into the councils? And also, I didn't mention delegations. Council asked us to bring back the delegations discussion before Christmas, so most likely we'll bring that back in December. That will be informed, obviously, by the outcome of the digitisation discussion.
So with districtisation, you're bringing everything in under one umbrella. Okay,
Yeah.
so everything comes in into the CODC region, and then so all of your assets are merged, so you don't have Tibet Valley asset and Manitoto.
The council will have the answers anyway, but it's still, they'll be itemised, won't they? And so if you look at the roading, instead of the ward previously, the ward would have paid, and this will be spoken to at length in the presentation, but instead of individual ward rates for different bits of council business, it's just a standard district rate. And so that probably helps with the transparency around what does roading cost in this council, what does it cost per ratepayer? When it's district, we have a clear understanding of that. But we'll go into some detail on this during the presentation, so you might want to just hold that question.
I was going to say, Jill, a really good example would be the decision that you just made earlier, the decision of the taken long-term plan. If digitisation is to go ahead, the whole district would pay that upgrade, rather than just be from this week. But we will go through those in that other slide, so we think.
Right. Yeah.
All right, so just some background. That in 2014 legislation, we were entitled to do the 30-year infrastructure strategy and the 10-year financial strategy. So the financial strategy is to consider every element of their funding streams, so their rates, their other revenue streams, their Other revenue streams include fees and charges and development contributions, and also in debt levels. So particularly in the balance sheet, it's to do with their debt levels, their servicing of that debt, and their decisions about repayments for that debt, along with any cash receipts. And it's also required to think about our current ratepayers, but also future generations. So at the moment, I think the key thing here is that because we have got rules-based decision making around 18% of their rates, being in the property in the parks and reserves and pools area, is that they are not included in the investment infrastructure strategy. So therefore, they do not get included in the financial strategy. Those decisions are coming to the board, and the best example. So they don't necessarily feed into the overall financial strategy of the council. So reserve accounts at a board level can be used at the moment for something that is specific to the ward, rather than actually considering what the whole overall financial strategy is. And that's a bit like, if you are managing your own finances and you have a mortgage and you also put some savings into a holiday account, if you can't pay your mortgage, then you have to take the money out of your holiday account to pay that mortgage. So that is how we need to look at financial strategy. We need to be thinking about that as a council as a whole. And if we need to use reserves that are to actually manage our debt levels, then we need to be able to do that. Just because the debt related to the which council. We are going to go into, so we're currently in debt, and that's the, in the last 2 years, this is the first time that the council's been gone into debt. And that means that we need to be really, really specific about the timing of our works programs, and so that we can actually manage the drawdown of that debt and to be inside the covenants of that debt. A good driver of the debt is the Three Waters program. So in the likes of the TVA Valley over the next 10 years, and I do say that these are very draft figures that we've got in the long-term plan at the moment, and we're doing introducing revision over the Three Waters. But there's about 11 million that is with the TVA Valley planned just in the Three Waters alone.
So why are we getting hit with $11 million worth of debt for Three Waters? Because we don't have a problem with water here. Nobody's dying with bad water. We're not having people hospitalised with bad water. And basically the government now has shifted the goalposts so far that it seems prohibitively expensive. You know,
So that's
we have
it's not just the TVA Valley, that's
I realise, yeah.
And when I say that there's some work to do about rationalising through Three Waters, it's going to have to be, I think, the whole nationally, there's going to be a pushback on those standards because it is important for the country.
There's two parts to it. So there's three parts. Firstly, the government's made the rules, so we don't give a choice to whether or not we do it. But in terms of talking to the government about, hey, these laws are going too fast, too far and too fast. Then the drinking water space, when the Water Services Act came in 2021, there was a response there like North, where nobody died in Catlock North either until they did. And that's the risk here, is that with the water quality that doesn't get multi-barrier protection, things can get through and make it very simple. That came through with all the parties, apart from National, actually didn't support one small part of it. The overall ethos, everybody said to get we've actually got to get this right. So we're not in a position to we're not in a position to argue, well, we can argue that we're sort of obey. In the wastewater space, there's quite a discussion going on because to whether
ambitious targets that have previously been set for wastewater, which will primarily involve disposing of the land, whether that's going to continue or not, and that might change things, but at the moment, you can only work with what we've got.
Right, yeah,
Yes.
and
When you talk about the infrastructure strategy and the fact that you've got 80% of cost utility there, infrastructure management with people, it is not coming into the infrastructure strategy. So therefore, we're not taking it into account when we're actually looking at the reserves, etc. But those areas, property, pools, parks and facilities, its capital expenditure is still facing the same financial strategy as that the rest of our infrastructure is. It's got rising, it's very much around the replacement of infrastructure. So that the issues are the same. They've also got increased national standards with impact on buildings, etc. So that is the drive to bring that long-term thinking across the district, and I think allowing us to be more proactive in the long term across all of the infrastructure, rather than being short term. And the playground equipment today is a case in point is that really strategically we should be fit into the replacement program over all of the structure with the lens on affordability.
So if I can just get in, if you use that playground infrastructure as a really good example, if this does go ahead, then in the LTP, the district would be looking at which playgrounds have the highest priority in the district to get replaced. So whilst the one here is perhaps higher than needs to be replaced, and maybe one that's actually now no longer compliant, we're going to take parts away because it wasn't compliant. So the council would have to look at, there'd be a bit of a batting order, and it would be for the boards to advocate for their case in their own areas. But the flip side of it is, instead of TVCB paying for that playground, the whole district would. So you might not get it as soon as you might through a board process, but because we've got to manage the overall, if we're going to spend 100,000 to make the number up, if we're going to spend $100,000 a year at council level on playgrounds, then we need to work out our priority as opposed to the board's priorities. It may take longer, but then everybody will be paying for it in the district. Is that a fair way of putting it?
I just want to point out here that previous generations have consumed their assets and haven't necessarily paid the true cost. So the situation that we're going into now that we're at the debt, so that we've got to weigh those debt levels up against our renewals. So the standard renewal program, which is generally funded through our rates for depreciation. Over our upgrades and our need to draw down debt for that. And how do we make sure that we actually balance up rate funding for depreciation as well as some sort of repayment over time, because we have to be really mindful of the future generations as well. So unfortunately, we understand if we've been rate funding for depreciation, etc., we wouldn't be in this situation. But over time, the financial issues have come to the forefront, and now we're kind of playing a catch up. So we've got to be really mindful of that.
so this, the whole thing, like basically all of New Zealand, all the councils in New Zealand, we're all going to come into one road structure. It's going to be basically.
No,
No,
it's 67 territorial authorities and 11 regional authorities. They will follow the Wakefield Act, but how they structure themselves within that, community board, vice, council, so on and so on. It's all slightly unique and different, but what we're proposing is not too dissimilar to what you see in other countries. Where I came from, we didn't have community boards, and so the council was the decision maker on all funding.
Right. I was just watching a submission that went into your old council and they'd worked it out that over the 10 years, the rates in Upper Hutt are going to go up by 200%. And Southland District, it's 228% over 10 years.
Underinvestment.
That is huge money. Huge.
That's,
And we.
that's based on the current expectations. So again, if that wastewater thing falls back, then there might not be as much support as another one. It's currently the LGNZ are working with pressure from government to say, hey, do all of our work need to be an earthquake standard. Isn't there more sense to go, you know, have a sign on the door saying, hey, if you're coming in to watch this play that's on for 2 nights this year, if there's an earthquake, it might not be that flash, it's up to you, as opposed to, you know, so there is a pushback on how far we're having to go at the moment until that works. Those are the numbers. Yeah.
What happens if you can't pay your rates?
Well, the rating on that covers that as well, what councils can do. And of course, you know, for this council, it works with the ratepayer to come up with a range of options. There is remissions policy, there's penalty policy, and all that sort of stuff to weigh that. But first and foremost, it needs a ratepayer to approach council because we're not clairvoyant on this. And if people approach us up and down the country, most councils will work with that. But it's only very few cases where people don't pay the rates and it comes up in the courts.
What's Queenstown and the whole things? What was it? I can't remember. People that have stopped paying their rates, huge, huge money.
Councils are a little bit like casinos. The bank always wins because the ratings act is such that councils can get in line first for payment.
So we have the ability to go to the mortgage for and the rates to be put on the mortgage. But we try to avoid that with the rate as we try to make sure that we with the payment plans, etc. The trouble is that what you've mentioned, Jill, is quite right. That those rates increases aren't going to necessarily stop. So we've got to be really careful that we don't just make it by that to for the on a payment plans by giving it too long. So yeah, we're trying to balance those things out. So as Needham has said, that debt levels will be reached within the next few years, and we've got to be really mindful of how we spending our reserves and what expenditure we are forecasting across the board, so not just within roading and free waters. We've got to be thinking about that alternative facilities perspective as well. Districtising gives us the ability to think that district-wide lens and more of a strategic view, whereby we can actually bring community forwards and voice them into strategies, but to make sure that we're not duplicating facilities across the district that we don't necessarily need. So that's a big part of this. We've got quite a few facility and recreation reviews coming up, particularly in the Cromwell space, in the Molyneux space, that we need to make sure that we have the greatest efficiency in those facilities, because they are long-term facilities. And you know, when we think about this particular board, you know, the Rochester Cold great facility, 20 years to really get where it is now. So we need to be thinking about the next 30 years and the journey of that, which by bringing it into the district would actually allow us to do that for planning.
So will districtisation lead to regionalisation, where suddenly, you know, you go from being in a district to being in a region, like Zone 6, suddenly everything from Waitaki down merges and melds, and
This wouldn't be part of that because it's in filing a CODC thing. It's not to say that a future government isn't going to go, you need to have these councils. There's been no noise out of government to do that, but who knows what the three borders situation may do. The current government's trying to get us to hold hands and sync on by and work together. If we don't, There is a bit of an argument that 67 councils in the country is too many. You have a council, you have some councils that are 21 square kilometres. They go wonder. I think for us here, and more of the emphasis every opportunity I have with like local government leaders and central government people in this space is we're 10,000 square kilometres. And if you merge us with somebody else, and people might look and go, well, to release the rich Queenstown and Central Otago, we'd be like 20,000 square kilometres. It's ridiculous. So you never say never. There's no real conversations about that at the moment, although local government probably does need some structural change. But what that might look like, nobody's really, the future of local government review has some ideas in it that certainly this government isn't picking up on. We've got enough on the plate to get worried about this that would need to be reviewed by the sector, and nobody in the sector is leading that conversation. So,
Is there a little bit of argy-bargy going on between the government and LGNZ at the moment? They keep bumping.
no, I think they're working really well. Okay, certainly the feedback we get. I mean, LGNZ got heavily criticised, and we're going right track, so I can just go on, but LGNZ got heavily criticised for sitting in the tent with the last government over 3 village reforms, but it's what you've got to do. So they're sitting in the tent with this government about what this government wants to do, because we're always the inferior party. And if you go here and someone with a bigger head, you don't want to carry it. So.
Well, the regional council is growing like a mushroom. It's now got 330 staff. And I would always maintain we don't need a regional council, because what does the regional council control Dunedin's buses? Why doesn't Dunedin control its own bloody buses?
We can talk about that at length, but I'll happily do that after this.
Well, my regional council rates have gone from 20 bucks to 200
Still the last
in a short space of time.
Wellington beat the gas rates. I was paying $1,900,
Must have a lot of land.
700 square metres.
Really?
Right.
Land sales, so obviously land sales is something that we have to take into consideration in the strategy. What we're talking about today is two types of land. So it's endowment land, and endowment land we have to use for the purpose of the endowment. And the other land that we're talking about is freehold. It was very simple, but we probably know it as freehold land. So we're not necessarily talking about our reserves land, because it's 3 categories of land. It's quite complex. What we're talking about here is potential land sales. So there is some land sales that endowment land that are within the plan at the moment, and I keep reiterating it's very draft plan. Those land sales have to be used for the purpose of the endowment. So if the purpose is for the betterment of borough funds, it could be used in that borough for water upgrade or wastewater upgrade, which would ultimately benefit the district. If there is no, if it's freehold, pretty simple, then that can be used for the district. And unfortunately, we're in that area of having to think carefully about how we use. If we're going to sell land, if we can only sell it once, we've got to think strategically about how we use that and how that fits with the wider program and the which is that over your particular land holdings, which includes everything, reserve land, everything, are on SharePoint. I've got them all copied off and laminated, so I will send some maps down, but you have got access to them on SharePoint.
I suppose the important thing to point out at this stage, there's nothing in the current thinking of getting land sales in this area. The ones that are so limited in the certain primarily in the from There is obviously some endowment made here that we have talked previously about, but nothing in market is not.
There's nothing in that, so. It's, yeah. Well, this would open the opportunity up for that discussion.
Yeah.
We would just, we had to talk about that endowment plan, didn't we, down at Grace Junction, what we're going to do with that?
It's landlocked, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, there's probably not a lot you can do.
no, it's really the lifestyle.
Reserve accounts, so a couple of things here. At the moment, we are going through this process of, making sure that we understand what's in everybody's reserve accounts. Upon districtisation, we can actually roll them back up. There is no legal issue around it, it's just how we recently account for them as an entity. But if we just go to the next brief, this shows you the reserves at the moment. As you can see there, that Cromwell reserves are very high. They come back to very similar levels to everyone else after the build of the Cromwell Memorial Hall. But you can see that we've always had this kind of bank in Cromwell. Because they have had high reserves. That because of the Cromwell Memorial Hall, we will be able to internally loan funds between wards. And when we get into later in the graph here, we can see that orange coming down. And the TVCB, the moment is doing quite a lot of earthquake strengthening from, earthquake strengthening for the community facilities. And so as a council, within the financial strategy, we need to be very aware that and look at that across the board rather than an individual board using reserves to do something that is counter to our entire infrastructure program and our entire financial strategy, because to go into reserve debt may not work for external borrowing options.
Well, sorry, Mr. Christians.
I'm just noticing how we were.
Oh, keep it in screen.
Just to give some context here, this is when we districtised the three waters in 2015, and it was actually the Tibet Valley that was the big driver of the conversation, because at that stage in 2015, you had done your initial wastewater water upgrade, and it was absolutely unaffordable for the valley. So that is when we made the decision as a district to districtise it, and in 2015 dollar terms, the Tibet Valley, the $714 being gained is year on year, but it's in 2015 dollars. So in 2024, that would be quite an increase. So back in the day, when you had three waters, every $8,000 was 1% on the water rates. And at the time, the two upgrades were in excess of $1 million, and it was unaffordable. So you can see that you would have been paying $1,866 on average a year for the three waters. When we districtised, that came down by 7%. Roading, similar. So, when we districtise roading, we would be up just over $1,000 per variance, whereas actually we were sitting at the district level, which is about $7. So you can see that spreading the cost of core services has been an advantage for the DBS. And what we're talking about today is bringing forward the services into that districtisation so that we can make sure that we're making the right decisions long term so that we don't actually have financial spikes.
So you can see there that dotted red line is what red line's paying for their road. If we were in a districtised road way back when, you guys would be paying about another 300, probably between roading and what you'd be paying in those dollars. Sorry, roading was back in $2015. You can see the huge difference. But if you look at the Manitoba, their rates would be $2,000 roughly more a year now if we had to districtise roading. That's why sometimes you've got to look at it and just go, there's no way around it. If we put it forward to do, I guess we can.
So just try, when you're doing that with roading, does that also mean that you come in under one big contractor that does also a lot of this has got to do with contracting? So they carry the costs of doing the health and safety, the hiring of road cones.
Yeah, well, I think we do concentrate our contract for roading with Fulton Hogan, so that's true. But if you look at the three waters, we're about to go out to 10 later on this year, we'll unbundle some of that contract. So again, it's up to councils how they structure those contracts. Councils do it differently.
Yeah, and we're trying to get this efficiency. So we do have one contract for parks and reserves now. It's just that what we're talking about here is the more strategic view of what's required across the district.
Yeah.
And how we fund that across the district. So what we're trying to do here is we're just phoning in on the 18%, so carry on with going there. So yes, so of our total rates revenue, only 18% is currently at the rating level. Now that does provide some complexity because of course everything in that 18% is charged differently per ward. So this is where it becomes quite complicated for a small amount of your rates. And it also means that we don't necessarily have the same transparency as we do for our other services. So this here, this is grouping. So on the left-hand side is the activities. On the right-hand side is where we group that into a rate. And the rates on the right-hand side are different for each ward. And then some of those can also have a differential. So there's another layer. So it is very complicated.
Confidence is a rational.
Yes. So grants is in there in red at the moment because we are proposing through this districtisation that the general grants and the promotions would stay at a level. Whereas these sorts of activities that have a lot of infrastructure associated with them, and they can have infrastructure and a service separately. So I'll give you an example like libraries. We actually property part of libraries is districtised, but the service for libraries is districtised. So you can sometimes get a conflict of interest in the service delivery. So these grants here is in red because we're looking at the general grant spot and promotional spot and stay with the boards, and real big infrastructure service deliveries would come back to the district. And that's just a breakdown of, how we actually rate those things. So, on the left-hand side, they're all for the rating unit basis. Whereas property is on a effective value basis. And just, okay, so probably about 75 to 80%, of that 18% is in your recreation and culture rate, which does include in parts of recreation. So many of these things.
So with your things like cemeteries and parks like that, when the council goes into debt, can you borrow against those as an asset?
Yes, there is, so they take that all into account, but those assets actually sit with council.
Yeah.
So the assets are here, it's just the funding decisions are in already board.
Yeah.
So the assets are already taken into account on your balance sheet. And that's what we deal with, the local government funding agency.
Yeah. Okay. So with the districtisation, you know, the vacuuming up in the cemeteries and bits and pieces like that to come under one council umbrella is to enable that and more borrowing. It's asset against, they can borrow against those assets, land assets.
Well, it wouldn't be nice more borrowing because they actually look at our own balance sheets now. What it means is that we can put those assets into their financial strategy to make sure that they're in there, and then that we're not making decisions about everything.
Yep.
So this is just a chart about what's in and what's out. And this is for modelling purposes only. So there's some things in here that you might think, oh, why is that in? It's so that we've got like with like. So we've got like in the infrastructure side of it. So we're then trying to make sure that we've got the right monies in that are sitting in budgets at the moment for the operational side of it. So you see we're saying the grants for the TV Valley, so that's at the 10.2 at the moment, which we're going to invest in the prior to. That would still be a pot. So it says at the top here that that's ward out. You can see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that means that we're anticipating that TV Valley promotions would be things that would come to this table.
That's how the scope for districtisation, or this retain one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Middlesbrough poll and the Roxburgh poll grants we've kept in the districtisation conversation because that's consistent across the whole district. Next slide. What we've got in yellow there is the CapEx spend that's existing on the types of the facilities that we're talking about in districtisation for the TV Valley. Some of your expenditure you've already stepped up to, which is absolutely fantastic. So we've only got 242,000 in the strengthening budgets down the bottom of the year. Whereas you'll see if you just go up to the linear total line, and the reason that the reserve accounts are going into deficit is that they've got 3.7 million of rate strengthening. And that's what we're talking about here is actually we can't afford for them to make a financial decision that's going to affect the rest of the district. So this is just a breakdown, the pie chart is a breakdown of the activity. So as I said before, probably 75% of it within the community buildings, the parks and reserves, and swimming pools, which is your recreation with ultra charge. So what we're talking about there is actually just trying to make sure that we get the financial and the infrastructure strategy issues sorted with these assets.
No, long-term plan, it said that, was it annual plan, you know, that, because council's got commercial properties. And then the money from that goes to other expenses. So what are the other expenses?
So it's that, so commercial properties, if we've got rent, there's quite a lot of leases in place, depending on where the property is at, whether it sits in, the ward. What we're talking about here is actually districtising that, so that we can be making sure that it's utilised as another revenue and being charged across a whole entire portfolio, not just really to the. But generally, unless in time it's covering, you know, the piece and maintenance, and if it needs a place to put in those sorts of things, we need to be making sure that we're recovering it. But if we're leasing it out, we need to be recovering it. And is there insurance in places we need to recover that from the tenants? So not just rates is going up, even if the feedback into making sure that if there's a charging basis. To compensate for things that relate to those limits. And that's why looking at this overall financial strategy for council is really, really important. So that is what is driving this districtisation of the smaller components, because if they're all spread out, the management of that just doesn't. So this is, I guess, a summary of what we're looking at for the TV Valley. We are looking at an increase in your rates year on year. If we districtise just with their existing assets, etc. So remember, so that's 233 on average per LTP year that your rates would increase to bring it up to the district level. But remembering that back in 2015, it was 700. It was the team that was gained in those securities year on year for the third increase. And what we just now. So that the 11 million of water privileges expenditure in the valley, and the impact of that is a lot more than $1 million upgrades that we did in 2015. Right, so this one gives you a detail over the 10 years. So if you look at the box at the moment, the TV Valley, the medium blue.
From the right, it's the
Yeah.
picture.
This one, right?
Yeah, it is. So over time, now these are very draft figures. So this only has the what's recorded here with the $35,000. So it doesn't allow you need anything to do with the main concern out there and something being wrong. Right? And generally, your funders, community funders will support capital expenditure. They don't so it's very light in the for Ticket Valley at the moment, but we would be facing an increase if we went to districtisation. But remembering that we can get the efficiencies overall, and remembering what's different. Yes, on revenue. If we move to the next slide, this slide is, I'm going to start talking shortly, but this slide is just, this really emphasises the infrastructure strategy and the need to start centralising these assets and looking across the district. It's taken probably 20 years to get a new pool together. What are we doing to plan for the future? Or do we need to do the same plan in 50 years' time? We've got a conversation happening in community at the moment. They have a poll that is council run, and therefore the rates impact on that poll. They want to look at replacing that poll. They already started that discussion. It's not in the infrastructure strategy, it's not in the planning strategy. So there is a big upgrade that we need to be thinking about long term that we haven't been thinking of. So this slide is, it's also probably light on costs because we've looked at depreciation, we've looked at staff, we've looked at these maintenance at the time, so it's probably very light. What this is showing what would happen to the TV Valley in year 2. We will take over the point and that is a council estate and actually planning for that future. So rate take the depreciation, so we've got the farmland, we'll replace that. Put some more dollars into the model that actually helps and something was right because it does go wrong. It's a new pool now, it's a great facility, and as I say, like funders will fund the capital expenditure, but not necessarily those operational. So just in comparison, you can see that, and I'm doing this on a very graphic, it's in a very light. If we just toggle back to the last slide. If we were to take over the pool, so it's community run, so anything that happens with expenditure happens at community level. So that means raising more funds for operational and the future. This is the increase, so it's the $233 increase in the TV Valley rates for districtisation. If we go to the next slide, and this is probably understated because it doesn't allow for R&M, you can see that there's not a big difference there. So over time, and this is 10 years, over time, you would be breaking even, and you would also have the rate funding for depreciation, which would mean that we're building up that pot for renewal when we need to renew.
I think it's really important use of language, so Steve, the term taken over is right, it's taken.
Sorry.
We'd be taking on the bill, it would have to be entirely Roxbury's TV's decision to do that. TV's the only one of our wards that council doesn't provide a pool limit. So there's a very clear question of fairness in that. You know, the community's done a fantastic job of building that pool, but if the main pump blows or you know, any number of things happen, it's back with cap in hand to CLT and the funding agencies. And the other thing we saw in Minnetonka last year and I think the year before was when the community was unable to staff the pool by being part of the whole, staff were able to be moved from Alex to go to Brentford to cover for sickness and things like that. There's a large number, but the biggest thing is the depreciation. From the moment that pool opened, it started to chew up its life, and that life isn't being paid for. So, but when it's take on, this is an option for the TDA to consider. It would even up the numbers. It's just something we have to raise in the discussion.
So when you was so talk about the poll, it's a long time before you were mayor. down at Miller's Flat, the council tried very hard to take over the running of the Miller's Flat pool.
Yeah.
They didn't like the key thing, there was no lifeguard, and there was a hell of a fight actually over the whole thing. So if council takes over the pool, takes on the pool facilities, does the community then suddenly fall under council rules like you can't have the pool open unless you have a lifeguard, the lifeguard's got to be funded? You know, I mean, nobody's drowned at Miller's Flat, but they will take out.
And also, our pool already has those limitations, and what we had last year was that we didn't have a lifeguard. And so all the children between ages, I think like 12 and 18, they had to be escorted to the pool by a parent.
12 to 18.
Yeah, because you have to be 18 or over to be able to go to the pool without a parent.
Holy
And
cow.
yeah, so actually having a lifeguard would give our children and those teenagers, when they want to be able to go to the pool on their own, they don't want their parents taking them to the pool.
Everybody just rocked up to the Miller's Flat.
Yeah,
pool.
so we'd already got those limitations, and it was challenging last year, and I did feel sorry for those children that couldn't just go to the pool because we didn't have a lifeguard. So having a lifeguard would actually be a really great thing, and I know a lot of our parents would love that because then they could send their kids off to the pool.
Can't we have the kids at Miller's Flat just go down the?
But we used to have a lifeguard at the pool, and so kids used to be able to go to the pool.
But you've got more kids here though too. This is a town.
And
It's Miller's is
and
different.
it's actually a service that we want to provide.
The liability of the health and safety act would be fairly extreme
Oh.
if something went wrong.
Totally, like we had all of our health and safety done by a professional, and there's no way that we could let a child in if they were under 18 without a parent.
No.
Because we would be the ones that.
No, I didn't know that either.
Who's that big
Thanks, I grew up in the generation I did.
It was mum who was 15 who had a baby and she couldn't take their child. Oh my God, with her parents. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And I even questioned it. I rang the guy back and said, "Are you sure that and it's like, that's the legislation." And if we didn't advise by that, then we would be the ones that would be taken to the plaintiffs. So,
Absolutely, something wrong.
yeah.
We knew that.
So, so a lifeguard is a good thing.
I'm not saying that it's not a good thing, but I'm just saying, you know, how many rules do the pools?
It doesn't change anything because there's national regulations that we already have to follow. So council's regulations. And, you know, like as well with working with David and Gordy's team, if we had a lifeguard, like we had a girl who we paid to work this year, she wasn't a lifeguard, but she worked in the shop, and she would just text us at 9 o'clock in the morning and say, "Oh, I can't make it to work today." So a volunteer had to go down there, and that was us that had to go down there and not get paid. But if we had a lifeguard that couldn't turn up, then that's a council problem. They get the person to come and work, you know.
Yeah, gotcha.
We had to call in favours from people all the time.
Yeah.
And she dropped us in it day after day.
They would wear out after a while, though, they volunteer enthusiasm.
Well, the volunteer
Yeah, pretty
enthusiasm
clear.
does wear out because, you know, we just spent a long time building that pool, and then we had to be down there on our days off over the summer, running the pool.
So today I kind of covered the why we're doing this conversation, and Stacy has been given to the potential what. How we don't all these. So look, we're really aware that this growing government information next slide, Sarah. Even with digitalisation, there is a critical role with the community boards, and that's really what I'd like to discuss today. There was an opportunity at our next meeting, we'll put this all into a paper for further discussions. You know, this is quite fresh, but under section 52 of the Local Government Act, it's enshrined in legislation guidelines. So as Susan's highlighted, we think the seat of funding decisions are made by this board from those activities that have been outlined. However, it's clear here that there's still a real critical role for this board in the community. You also got the pulse of the community. You guys know what's going on. You guys know if the playground equipment needs, but to hear all of those things. So really what we'd like the conversation about today, next slide, is in the future, if digitalisation was to go ahead,
how you best, represent your community, really what good looks like and what support you need from staff. So it's quite an open-ended question. We've put up some ideas there. So Sarah and Wayne have done a lot of work, have looked at other councils and, things like there's much more formal processes through annual plans, for example, for submissions from boards. So the boards actually get together, talk about what is critical in their ward and make a formal submission that does carry a lot of weight. So in a way you have a lot more say in some areas than we do at the moment. We might bring you the roading program, for example, but you don't really submit it on this board. So there's like actually lots of opportunity for this community's voice to be heard. So and then second slide there, some other ideas, the fact that Tim already mentioned one earlier around having the chair or delegate come and talk to the council about the critical things in this ward. So really getting the TVC's issues and what's happening down here at that council level. And you know, so Sarah's put in some ideas there around, for example, act as a liaison on key projects. So if you're redoing a big upgrade in King George Park, is you know one of you being delegated to work alongside 40 and represent the views of the board. And we haven't really, because we've had quite high delegations previously within this council, I don't think those other avenues for your voices to be heard really haven't been explored. So yeah, I know there's a lot of bullets up there, but really opportunity to hear from you all here today. If there's any sort of initial thoughts that you have around what you need from staff, you know, what kind of things you'd like to be doing that we could put into the paper and so the conversation with you guys. I'll open it up to the call for any thoughts, comments.
Norm is offline now.
Oh.
He says thanks, but he had to leave.
Yeah, no.
Well, you know, you say what do you see your role as on the community board, you know, like with the rates, I spent 3 afternoons outside talking to people about their rates, which is devastating to a lot of them. They simply won't be able to afford it. You know, and it's just to take the pulse of what's going on, what people are saying, and to try and get a few things moving forward. But the things that we need to get done in the valley, we just can't seem to get done. First of all, Cuban Channel and King George Park, just another bloody mess again after that rain on Wednesday. You know, and those little streets, they haven't been curbed and channeled for 40 years that I've been, or 42 years that I've been in the district. You know, and those are just core basic services. You know, when you've got a hill at both ends of a short street, the poor bastard at the bottom's garage gets flooded because its drains aren't cleaned out. You know, so those basic core services. And I think transparency. A lot of people think that you pay your rates and get a return for a service, and they're finding out that actually now you don't. It's just property tax on the you know, on the value of your on the value of your property. Council's moved away from core services into the wellbeing agenda. I think there needs to be a lot of openness about that. You know, because as councillors we talk about core services all the time, but the wellbeing agenda isn't about core services at all. And people are also really, you know, starting to become informed about LGFA now, and that their private, you know, collectively our private property is used as collateral against council debt, and that's quite a frightening thing. You know, that your rates can keep just going up and up.
Just to clarify, with council assets that are used for LGFA, not property.
Yeah, but in their forum, in the LGFA forum, it states quite openly that there is no upper limit to the rating. And that's pretty frightening.
Although we do get covenants,
Yeah.
so we can only borrow 175% their rates of income, and without going for a standing follow credit rating. I guess if we go back to your first point about services, when we financial strategy and structured strategy for the first year, it was under a government that had talking about the legislation in councils where to be only down to the services. Governments change, the principles that we have to operate under now are different. And that's when the wellbeing gets in, wasn't, we now it's come back in. So a good part of it's kind of like for water standards, you know, it's going to cost us a lot of money if we don't comply with the existing legislation. So how we get to finance through upgrades, I think we are to be able to be fine. And we don't get it. So it's very fun.
So say if you were, as a council, if you were against not against the upgrades as, because you know, it's always good to have your water stuff upgraded, but that you're seeing it as really extreme, how could we help you? You know, could we get behind you as a community and say, well, hang on, look, this is so way over the top. Can we scale this back down a little bit?
It comes down to national elections. So if somebody steps up and goes, right, our party voters that we're not going to have the treat drinking water. So all that problem goes away. And in fact, it's voting for the national level, then that they make the law. But outside of that, if we say, oh, by the end of next year, we've got to put cryptosporidium barriers into the Cromwell waste drinking water plant. That's going to cost a lot of money. At the number off the top of my head, it's going to cost a lot. We said we're not doing that. Just get started. So it's much harder one. The water regulator, they'll warn us. Approximately speaking, I don't know the process speaking, they'll warn us. And they'll say, get this sorted within 6 months, something like that. You know, stop being silly. And then if we don't do it, they'll fine us. And then if we still not doing it, they'll fine us again. And then if we're still not doing it, they'll probably fine us again at that stage. The government will probably kick all councillors out and bring commissioners from out of town to do what the laws say. So that's why it's, people say, tell the government gets stuck. And I always say to them, well, I have a lot of drink drivers who would tell me the drink driving laws are stupid too. Never work particularly well to tell the judge to get stuck.
But you know, if you're doing it, but if you're trying to do that by yourself, you know, if you have a community movement behind you to add some weight to it, so that we're happy to upgrade our water to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But you know, we're spending extras of millions of dollars for no. See, down at Ettrick, they've had to put in on a private board a whole thing for E. coli. We don't have E. coli in Ettrick water. We just don't have it because it's not a source for, you know, a source doesn't come when we don't get E. coli.
They thought they didn't have E. coli in the water either. But
No, that was rain event that swept deep shit down before. I mean, that was.
So you do want to.
But that happened in 2016, didn't it? We now took 2024 and it hasn't happened since.
There's been frost. And there was Queenstown just last year. But look, at the end of the day, we could debate this forever. And for me, there's been no party that stood up and said, we're going to throw out national on that, said the 1+1 to water supply is stupid, which I totally agree with them. They're sort of looking at changing that to if you've got 30 or even 50 houses at the end of the same bore or drinking water tank, whatever, it's not going to mean that treatment. That's perfectly fine. But nobody's advocating that. But probably the bigger debate is in the wastewater space. But to come back to your core question, the country's government makes the laws and we don't have a choice but to obey it. Or we get fined when we're just, as Susan said, we're just throwing money away.
Yeah.
Frustrating as that can be, and that's part of being part of LGNZ that can advocate in various spaces and say, earthquake prone buildings are actually really good. Because for me, it's just stupid that I can't take a decision to take a risk to go into a building that might, you know, in the period of time that I'm in there watching the show or whatever, if the earthquake hits, well, that's the risk I'm taking.
Well, yeah, you can't stay home in bubble wrap, can you?
And in terms of King George Park, I think we were, as a community, we're going to look at what we could do down there, but we've got to be mindful as well about rates because it costs the ratepayer the money to do the work. So do we want to burden our ratepayer with putting some tube and shelling it? You know, that's the decision that we have to make in the discussion.
That's a land transport.
That's
So that's what we've got to.
Yeah, and that's if they would do it. That's if they would come to the party. Yeah.
Just on that point, Jill, that you raised around that sometimes it's quite hard to be projects driven and the early conversation around, well, who do we ask about this?
one idea that the company to the CEO was around potentially having a role within the council. So in addition to what Sarah does for you, that really is your point of contact going, hey, we want to call NZTA about this particular issue or want to do this project, can you help us? So just initial thoughts, we'll have to go through LTP because it was the additional cost of it as well, through support committee boards and things like that. Initial thoughts on whether that would be useful and helpful for the school.
There'd be a discussion with Norm and,
Well, I think so.
Mark.
Yeah,
Well,
I
yes.
think so. Yeah. And, I think as well as the community board, I think, we do have some really good opportunity going forward to drive some projects, because we've ticked the swimming pool off, that one's done, and you can't overburden the community with more than one project at a time. And we've done that, so now we do have an opportunity to go, okay, what is it that our community wants, and see if we can drive something. And we don't have to rate fund at all, like we can go and get external funding, because if we go to CLT and OCT and lotteries and get money, our ratepayers aren't paying for it.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win.
Yeah.
But, we can get maybe some money from council. The other thing that we can get from council is really great support. So
yeah,
if we need to, like we can get really, I found that with a swimming pool. We had to do, we had to get a little bit of land, we had to get a bit of road reserve land to get the pool done. I mean, that was just not a problem. There were several things that I had to do at the pool. The council made it really easy for me to get that done. And it's not necessarily a cost to the rate, it was no cost to the ratepayer. And I think with projects that we want to do, I think that's how we have to be strategic and look at it. And it's like, okay, what can we do for this community? But what can we do without burdening a ratepayer? Because we don't want our rates to keep going up.
no.
But we can ask for pockets of money from other funders, and it's not that hard to put an application in. Not hard at all.
That's good to have back in your council, a lot of expertise.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been a really good initial conversation, and so there will be an opportunity, an informal meeting coming up and something this week, Sarah, do you know this week?
That's
Yeah. To reflect on this, and we can have a further conversation. So just next slide, please, Sarah. Okay, so what's in here for us? Is that we really had citizens from the delegations specific paper. So what we heard from community boards was they really felt they were part of the conversation and that they were part of the decision making. So we're really looking to make sure we hear your views, even if ultimately it's opposed to districtisation. We want council to know that's the position of the Tevere Valley Community Board. So, so today's a really conversation. In our next meeting, we're going to put all of this, Susan and I are going to put all of this in paper for you to reflect on, having seen it written down, to further thought about what the role could be. There's going to be two opportunities for this board, obviously you can meet obviously separately from start, to feed that into that, to council. The first opportunity is going to be on the 26th of June, where the chair or delegate is going to be invited to the council to really give the sort of initial sense of the board's view, any concerns or questions coming from this board. So that's 26th of June. There's also an opportunity, if you so wish, to write some written feedback on this. That will be by the 8th of July. The reason will be 8th of July because that will enable us time to think about your submission, your written feedback, and to incorporate it into that decision paper. So there'll be the sort of the key engagement steps coming up for this board to input into the decision. And that decision will be whether or not to go out and have this conversation with the community. There'll obviously be a formal engagement process with the community, which of course the board will come back to you around how the board may wish to be involved in, and which will be during August. But the stuff we've been talking about really is the lead up to that decision that we probably misstepped in the delegations conversation of bringing that earlier to the board and not to rush. So that's sort of what's ahead. So we will be coming back very soon next week for a further conversation. Essentially what that paper will lay out all the data you've seen, plus also outline those consultation steps and this board, the decision of this board alone, whether or not they wish to
make a written submission, you don't have to. You can discuss it. Like,
Any questions,
When's Norm back?
So Norma's.
He's here next week.
So he's back, but Mark's not here and I'm not here, so it would be the three of you.
On the 13th, yeah.
Valley Prospects is an organisation I'm not familiar with, but I suspect should be consulted. I remember the community garden experience and group of people who I'm actually hope that and but I go along and do a little bit of with Monday morning call it Monday because that's quite a little focus group of interested people. So yeah.
just written those both down, Russell. What we'll do as part of the formal engagement, note both of those, I think would be really good. We have some conversations, if council decides to get out in August, and we'll get those scheduled at this stage. Really like thinking like the business breakfasts down here, and there's a middle split coffee group as well. So we're really starting to think about those conversations to be had. So it will be, and I even know with deal with the annual plan, what we are thinking, if council decides to go and have this conversation with the community, is there will be more opportunities within that formal consultation period of the month for the community to come along, learn about it, get you say, like, okay. So welcome any thoughts from this all around, just going up, Russell said around what those meetings and groups and this one's.
Well, in theory, we represent the community, but in actual fact, we don't, because, you know, how does the community get through to us for us to represent them? That's quite a problem, isn't it?
They run you, Russell.
Hmm?
They run you, all go ahead on time.
Yeah.
And definitely, say if you wish to put written feedback, it's the 8th of July. You guys can now be going and talking to your community about this. This has been, I know the workshop has been live streamed. So you can start beyond this board, you know, having conversations and just getting a sense to bring that back as a collective for your written submission. So you can start doing that now, get a sense of what
will mean we get some efficiency and we need to think for trends. And you have a little experience, I think ways to try and explain the great increases in relation to something. And the fact that it's they've like lost the district. So it's an average take into account commercial. Yes, if you have ideas around engagement, if you just probably visit those with Sarah, and she'll, that maybe the ones from today, she'll like to make sure that. That's us, you think quick.
Well, thank you very much for playing a very good meeting. I'm very impressed with your performance today, Susan. So thank you.
Wow, that's high praise.
It's a repeated problem.